Hi, welcome to the BD Roundtable. We're here today with Lara Quie to talk about how BD teams can work better and closer with their lawyers. In this session, she helps us better understand the lawyer mindset, where and why friction can occur, and how the BD teams can establish a better relationship with their lawyers. So if you want to join us for future sessions like these and participate in the live Q&A, head on over to the bdroundtable.com to sign up to become a member. When you do, you get access to our private Slack group community, which is full of hundreds of legal marketers like yourself. Now, here's Lara. But you have gone through the training that lawyers undergo, right? And there's a certain mindset that lawyers are working with. Can you help us walk through some of that training that they've gone through and how that may make them a bit difficult to work with, or may cause a little bit of friction between the BD teams who are always outgoing and have new ideas and want to try out new things?
Absolutely. So recently I transitioned into being an executive coach, and my focus is very much on lawyers. And because of that, I started looking into the research into lawyer personality, and also because I'm absolutely fascinated with why the profession has quite a high number of very unhappy people. It is known to be one of the unhappiest professions in the world. And having been an unhappy lawyer myself, and having left the law and felt that it wasn't the profession for me, I began to look into why this might be. And I came across some research which is absolutely fascinating by Dr. Larry Richard. He himself had been born into a family of lawyers and judges, and he had discovered that the natural path for him was to just go into law himself. So he just followed that, went into it, was a practicing lawyer for 10 years before he discovered, you know what, I honestly don't fit. I'm absolutely unhappy. I'm going to do what I always am interested in, and that is actually psychology. So he went to university, did a degree in psychology, and later did a PhD in psychology with a focus on lawyer personality. And what he noticed is that lawyers are actually a very homogenous group, and that they actually are extremely different from the general public. So, originally in his thesis, he examined 3,000 lawyers, and he made them do the Myers Briggs personality test.
Right.
So, looking at 3,000 lawyers, he was able to come up with various traits that he noticed were particularly enhanced in lawyers. He later then went on to analyze them using a different test, and this is called the caliper profile. And the good thing about the caliper profile is that it places personality and different traits, 18 different traits, on a scale of 0 to 100, with the average person being 50%, if you imagine. And what he discovered are these traits that set lawyers apart. And so, number one is skepticism. The traits that make a lawyer absolutely fantastic at being, a good lawyer and being able to defend their clients, being able to analyze documents, look at an M&A transaction, and work out what's a good deal for their client, what hidden agendas there might be, etc. So on a scale of 0 to 100, lawyers rate 90% compared to the average person who's 50. This means that they are highly, highly skeptical of anything. So, if you're going to have a high skepticism, you are also going to have a very low level of trust. And that means it's quite difficult for them to develop relationships. And so, what you also have is another very high incidence of autonomy. Autonomy is, the desire to be independent. These people want to be, completely independent, not told what to do. They want to have everything under control. They want to be quite perfectionist. They're not good with spontaneity, not good with surprises, and they have been likened to being a wheelbarrow of frogs. And so that's why law firm management really struggles with controlling their lawyers. Another thing that's a trait with lawyers is high urgency. So urgency is 71%. So you know how they're always telling you, I've got a deadline, and oh, this has to be done yesterday, and oh, go, 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 right? That is part of their personality. And of course, it's emphasized and actually exacerbated by clients telling them that they need to be super responsive. Another thing is low sociability. But by sociability, what's meant by that is actually the desire to have very personal, intimate relationships. And lawyers generally like to keep things to the facts, to the information. They don't like to tell you a lot about their personal life generally. Most of them are quite closed and want to be very professional and business-like. And this is something that's actually, a personality trait and helps them with their skepticism and, ability to focus on the job. Another thing is low resilience. They've got a 30% resilience compared to the average person. And what that means is they are extremely thin-skinned and super sensitive to criticism. They don't do well with feedback. This means that it's difficult, right? Because actually they need self-awareness. There are things that go wrong. Clients will often criticize them, but they're always mortally wounded by that, and they get very defensive very easily. And if they sense that an attack is coming, they will automatically go on the defensive and counter-attack. So they may already know that something's wrong, and they will already launch the counter-attack before you've even said anything. And the last thing I want to touch on is low empathy. Theirs is 41% compared to 50 for average people. And again, if you imagine low empathy, that means very low emotional intelligence. So the soft skills, right? So that's all about, again, the relationships. And if you think of the combination of what they've got going on, which is high skepticism, low trust, low sociability, not wanting to be personal, not being able to build good, strong relationships, being very urgent, always kind of on edge, it means that they are so highly driven. And this is something that is difficult for the average person to deal with. And so I think in our conversation today, what I really wanted to bring across was the fact that the profession as a whole attracts lawyers with these personality traits. They then go through law school where, in terms of the academics, they're told, right, well, you have to question this and make sure that you come in it with an objective mindset, and you have to be analytical for everything, and so they're trained to be really professional, really deadline driven, really efficient, focusing on the facts, getting the deal through. They are not really taught the soft skills. That's not really a big part of lawyer training. That is expected to be conducted by the law firms. And obviously different law firms go into it to different degrees. And some firms have got a lot of budget and do some amazing soft skills training. But I would say the majority actually kind of leave it to the lawyers themselves. And when you think of all the character traits and personality traits that I've just described, they're not likely to seek out this kind of thing for themselves because they don't really want to be empathetic. Like, they're not driven by that. They don't understand. But the reality of a modern law firm is that the whole business is relationship driven. Relationships with the clients, relationships with your colleagues, relationships with your support staff, relationship with the management, relationship as a so-called group of, partners. So that is very, very difficult for lawyers. And this explains why when you go in as a BD professional, especially if you've come from a different environment, let's say you've come from accounting, let's say you've come from a media company and you're doing business development, lots of people are very surprised when they realize what's going on. It's a very political environment. People are very, very, extremely intelligent, but they're extremely autonomous, not wanting to move forwards as a group. And so this is the landscape for the business development professional, and it is a tough one. And so I hope to share some things that I've learned along the way.
Wow. Okay. So you you just explained sort of all the reasons why a lot of our BD initiatives fail, right? It's all the feedback programs and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, they're kind of contrasting the natural inclination of the lawyer mindset, and that's compounded with all the years of training that they've undergone as well. So I think, well, actually, we should just do a call separately on, each of those traits and what we, there's a lot to unpack there. Okay, so now we kind of have the understanding that, as a whole, these lawyers are working with these sorts of traits. Obviously, not all, fit into all of those. But generally speaking, I think we can all agree they fit. So how can the BD teams, understanding these sort of traits, how would you recommend we approach the partnerships, the lawyers? Would it be on an individual basis? What would be your best advice for us on how to work better with our lawyers?
Yeah. So, like I said, the skepticism of the lawyers is very pronounced, the 90%. That means that anything you suggest, they are immediately going to question it. They will say, well, what evidence have you got that this works? And, why should we do that? And, very sort of disbelieving. No, very often lacking in enthusiasm for new ideas because they are very averse to change and they are very risk averse.
Hmm.
So if you understand that they're risk averse and they like facts, well, it would be very useful to develop a pilot program. So when you first get to your law firm, or if you've been there for a very long time, you will know who are the people, who are the movers and shakers around there. People who are naturally good at relationships, and you can be use them as your example. So I suggest pilot programs where if you've got an idea, you find someone who's going to be your champion, your role model. So you test it on them. So you come and say, hey, I'm thinking of doing these roundtables. As an employment lawyer, this would be a great opportunity for you to showcase your skills and possibly have some really good conversations, in a small group. What do you think about doing a round table? So that individual, hopefully, if you've chosen the right person, will go, okay, yeah, sure, let me give it a go. Imagine it works out for them incredibly well and they get 3 new clients from that round table. You then hold them up as a shining example. So you go to the next person, you say, we've been running this program of roundtables, and Matthew Johnson did one a couple of weeks ago, and my goodness, he's got these 3 new clients. It worked really well. The clients adored it. It was a really great event. What would you think about doing that yourself? When that person hears that you've trialed something, that it works, and that it has return on investment, and that they have now got clients, they will be biting your hand off to be the next person to run that. So whenever you've got a new idea, if you can think of a way to test it out and demonstrate that it works, then you can go large and roll it out to a lot more lawyers. So, always thinking about the skepticism and how you can provide evidence that something works. So definitely pilot programs.
Okay. No, that's, yeah, great advice. I think BD teams all have all these great ideas and they know exactly how it's going to work and they know it will work, but we don't have any proof to back it up.
Yeah.
Now with the trait, the urgency, right?
Yeah.
All these deadlines, I need this proposal by noon, or I need it by COB today. And they've been sitting on it for the past 2 or 3 weeks, and then
Mm-hmm.
they just send it to you.
Yeah.
How would you recommend we work with those tight deadlines, and what's the best way to?
So I'd say now that we all recognize and understand that this urgency is actually a personality trait and that it's a natural thing within them, it may mean that we can also approach their urgency and deadline with some skepticism ourselves. So what a good idea is to always ask the lawyers, tell me exactly when you need this by, and tell me about the scenario. Because actually, they always want everything yesterday. But if you have already developed a good relationship where they recognize how much time you've got in terms of, let's say, I think, Will, you're a one-man band where you are. Well, maybe you're not, I don't know. But if you are a one-man band or a one-woman show, if you can't deliver something to 12 people all at the same time, there's got to be some sense of order. So understanding the real deadline, understanding the real nature of the urgency, etc., will help you to prioritize the work. Because I found that most of the time they would always tell me things would genuinely urgent and yesterday, but the reality was that it wasn't. They just wanted it themselves. So some things genuinely are time driven and some are not. So it is hard to work through that. But I think asking the question, what is the nature of this? When do you need it by? And then being able to prioritize things. Because actually, in a lot of cases, when you ask that question, although they've given you the impression it's super urgent, they may say, well, actually tomorrow afternoon, as opposed to, oh, I thought you meant tonight. So, it's definitely good to ask that.
It's kind of like submissions, right? They say they're due on this date, but really, you could
Yeah.
it a bit.
Yeah. So
we can set our own internal deadlines a bit. And then,
yeah, managing the directory submissions is a big part of the BD job at law firms for sure. And so what I used to do was, when as soon as the Chambers and Legal 500 released their timetable, I would create a real deadline in the spreadsheet, but then I would also have false deadlines. And I would send all the false deadlines to the lawyers at the beginning of the year so that they can see exactly what's coming up. And also you can obviously mark up their practice area. So if they're an M&A, you could see, oh, well, that's in July, or that's in March, or whatever. So you can flag up the false deadline to those lawyers and say, okay, this is what we're aiming for. And you can tell them as soon as the timetable comes out, and you can send them a diary request so that the week before, let's say, of the false deadline, it starts to flash up for them. Hey, start to think about everything, make sure you're getting your deals in order, get your house in order, folks, because we are going to be coming to discuss this with you and start on the submission. And I think that by having the false deadlines, they are still, even though you manage that process as best as possible, they are probably still going to fall behind. But at least you've got your false deadline, and you should give yourselves at least a week or another 2 weeks ideally to really get it all sorted. But I think being slightly strategic about these things can be very helpful, rather than telling them, oh, actually the real deadline is tomorrow.
Right. Well, I want to ask you in the Q&A session, so we'll save that for that, about the whole independentness conflicting with the partnership model, working as a group, because a lot of our initiatives, work off of the group, and we need group input, and yet the partners are very independent. So we'll talk about that in the Q&A. But I want to wrap up to get your advice on, okay, how can we develop these relationships on a personal level?
Yeah.
What would be your advice for, let's say, a new BD person who's coming into a firm? He has a whole panel of these lawyers that he has to help out. How can he get to know them, or he or she get to know them on an individual basis?
So what I found is, like I mentioned before, you can usually work out those lawyers who are more open, who are better with relationships, have better EQ skills. And you can start off by approaching them and maybe going out for lunch, or seeing if you can go for tea, or asking them when they might be free to go and have some time with you. But come out of the office if possible, develop that personal one-to-one relationship. Tell them, I really need to get to know you and your strengths and weaknesses. I really need to know your practice. Who are you targeting? What industry sector are you focused on? Let me get to know you so that I can deliver the best service. And of course, they are people who are easily flattered. They love to be told how great they are, that you're showing personal interest, and the idea of them as an individual. So like you said, the autonomous person, the individual, the independent person loves that personal attention, because obviously I've said, they are a homogenous group, but at the same time that is a stereotype, but which is strong. So taking into account the nature of the stereotype and the awareness of all the traits that I mentioned, you can see how each individual may play within that scheme. So you will find some people who are literally in the back office, head down, beavering away, just doing billable work, no interest in being out there developing clients. That's fine. They are not going to be your BD champion. Leave them alone. You've got other people who will be enthusiastic. So develop those personal relationships. Find out the things that will work best for them. If it's a one-to-one lunch that they're going to be able to develop a good relationship with someone, have a think about who might be a good target. Look through the firm's database. You may have a great CRM system that would work out which would be a logical person. Maybe you use LinkedIn, find out various people, see how you could connect them. Always having something really proactive to offer these people really will put you in a great light. I must say, I have developed literally super fans, certain lawyers who know that if they're in my good books, I will bring them work. So it is quite important to show that you're open for that relationship. They can also actually develop their relationship building skills with you. You can help them in terms of maybe trying to see what they may be struggling with and help them build their self-awareness. And like I said, they are low resilience, and they don't take criticism. So you'll need to be very careful with your language about how you draw this to their attention. But remember, they're super, super bright people, and they want to succeed. And therefore, if you're able to explain why something might not be working in their favor and how they might be able to improve, they would be on that, and they would actually get really good results. So I think the main thing is that they're highly teachable. They're very, very adaptable once they are aware. And I think most of it is the lack of awareness, the lack of time. They're honestly deadline driven in a highly stressed environment with clients breathing down their neck, working on this billable hour. They are very overworked. They are very fatigued. And people who have fatigue tend to be quite irritable, quite nervous, bit on edge. So I think now that you have a real understanding of the whole mindset and personality, etc., being very positive, but being very alert and sensitive to the nature of their job, the nature of their personality, and always ensuring that you're not surprising them. They don't deal well with spontaneity. So you coming in with the deadline, oh my goodness, panic, because you haven't been organized, that is really not going to go down well. You need to be extra organized and give them plenty of advance warning, and develop that rapport with them. Let them, be themselves. Start to ask some questions, try to warm up a bit of their personal, some insights, maybe if they have children, but just sort of be sensitive and sort of listen very carefully to what they're saying and feel whether they're feeling comfortable with that. Some of them are, some of them are not. But knowing that when they're not comfortable, don't just, barge on through like you would with another BD colleague. Just be sensitive. Oh, this person, okay, they're actually low on sociability.
Okay, so for those on the call now, stay on. We're going to transition into the Q&A session. So we have 30 minutes of Q&A. But for those who are watching on LinkedIn, thank you, Laura, for joining us today. Where can we get in touch with you if we want to reach out for more?
Yeah, thanks. So please do just reach out on LinkedIn. So I'm www.linkedin in Lara Quie, one word. Please do reach out. It'd be great to connect.
Okay, and you also do your executive coaching, right? So if any lawyers are struggling or finding themselves in need of some support, they can reach you for that as well.
Yep, that's right. So I do executive coaching and business development consulting. So I do help lawyers with their individual practice growth, perhaps considering a move in-house, considering trying to become a partner, any change involved. So wanting to reach that next level, thinking about, going in-house, thinking about starting their own business, perhaps interested in legal technology, maybe wanting to become an entrepreneur, anything that involves needing a starting point. You may be stuck or you may have an idea and you don't know what to do. So I help people. I give them all that support.
All right.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Thank you so much.